Well. I am all by myself at the moment. We're going to fix that. I'm not sure why Roger Wade is hanging out in the wings. There he is. All right. He was out in the lobby there.
All
Roger,
right.
good
I had
evening,
to
my
run into
friend.
my seat. Here.
Yes, indeed. Hey, it is March 29, 2024, and this is season 8, Roger, episode 13.
13. It's been 13 weeks. We've been hanging with you. 13 weeks. Praise God.
Yes, indeed. Hey, and Dr. Henry is on his way. Ladies and gentlemen, he's going to be with us. He's going to be right down there or on one of these sides of me in just a little bit. He was doing a communion rehearsal tonight, so he's rushing back, trying to get back to his home studio. So he'll be with us momentarily. But Raj, we are at the end, the very end. This is the last episode of season 8. How you feel, man?
Man, I yesterday I was like, I can't wait for it to take a break. But today I'm recharged and ready to go. And we're looking forward to the plans, the things that we have planned for next season. I'm just excited about before, we'll share a little bit about that towards the end. But we're just excited for what God has done through the past, this season in particular, and then what he's going to do in the season to come.
Amen. This has been a fascinating ride, and I'm excited about what the future holds. But this is what I know about what the future holds for the next 4 weeks.
Go on and say it.
We're going to be on a little break, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We will not be here in the month of April. So PRT is taking a little hiatus in the month of April to get ready to bring you a fantastic season 9.
Yes.
So throughout the month of April, was that 4 Fridays? Is it just 4?
4 Fridays in the month, but we're working just so that you would not feel like, oh, no more PRT. We're probably going to do the greatest hits in the month of April. And but beginning in May, we'll start with brand new shows in
like
May.
A band.
We'll start with brand new shows in May. So we're looking forward to that. But what we actually want you to do for us, we'll have a poll up by next week. I shouldn't say maybe, but by next week. And we want you to go on and you vote the particular topic episode that you would want us to do a part 2 on. We don't want to just do any part 2s. We want to do your part 2s. And so you want to go on and do the poll for our part 2s in the next season. We are planning to do that, and we're looking forward to hear what you would like us to have a part 2 on.
Yeah, I'm still back on the greatest hits. The Reverend Dr. Roger R. Wade and the PRT. PRT band. Greatest hits. Looking forward to that. All right. Woo is in the chat tonight. Ashake, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ashake Patrick, but Mama Patrick. We can go with Mama Patrick. It's in the chat, bringing us Sabbath greetings from the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Listen, if you are joining us tonight, we want to know that you're there. We want to know where you are joining from. So just type that in the chat, put a shout out there. Where's home for you? And let us know that you're with us tonight. We're excited about this topic.
Many of our viewers may not be on tonight because tonight actually begins Oakwood University's alumni weekend. And many of our viewers are alumnus of Oakwood. I saw a few of them this morning at a funeral I was at, and they said they're in the area to be at Oakwood. So I hope that they can join us, maybe in the replay. But we know that many of them may not be here. But for those of you who are here, we thank you for being a part of Pastors Roundtable tonight.
Hey, let's ask. I gotta ask the question. Are there any Oakwoodites that are in the chat with us tonight? Where y'all at, Oakwood? I was gonna say Oakwood College.
OU.
That's my era.
Excellent.
O something.
Yeah.
OC, OU. Listen, man, very quickly, last week, we're hoping Dion is going to be here in just a minute now. Last week, talk to me, Roger, here he is. If any of our audience missed last week, what did they miss? Hey, there's Dr. Henry. He made it just in the nick of time.
Goodness. Last week, we talked about finances. We're finishing up this season on the topic of finances.
Mhm.
We talked about how do you finance the church's mission. And we had two guests who blew it out of the water, blew it out of proportion, sharing on things we need to take into consideration when trying to finance the church's mission. And I was just like blown away from the simple things to the great things that they recommended.
Okay.
Got to go and watch the replay.
Hey, listen, I'm going to take Wu's comment as an opportunity. Did you see that? He says PRT needs to go live from the lobby of the Von Braun. Listen, we would love
That's right.
to. But Roger, talk to us, man. We normally do this on the break, but we're going to do it right here, right now. For us to go live from the Von Braun, that would take something. What would it take for us to do that, Pastor
Well,
Wade?
listen, they have, our viewers, thank you so much. You have supported Pastors Roundtable, not just in showing up on Friday nights, but you have supported us. You have put your dollars where your fingers are. You know, you use your fingers to tap in and to key in, but you've put your dollars where that is. So we want to thank you. So if you go to the bottom of our website, prt.live, you will see a link for support, and you can come on and support Pastors Roundtable in a tangible way. 5, 10, 15, 500. And those are the ways we can see how we can be in the lobby of the Von Braun.
Yeah. Hey,
That's right.
Is it? It's not too transparent if we put out, like on the website, the amount of support that has come in. Is that too out of pocket?
It depends on what you're saying. So I'm not going to comment.
I don't have to say who, but just the this is what has been raised. It's like a report.
Well,
we talk about transparency. Let's model it.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a project or something that we have too, I think that would be to kind of let the people know that we're raising money for this. But then, of course, the operations of the PRT group. I mean, I guess there is some way that we can let our people know how much we have so far, and that will help them that will motivate them to give.
Yeah, I think we put the operational costs out there, and again, just the transparency of it all. We're talking about trying to be relevant, resource, and real. Let's I don't know. We'll see. What do y'all think, audience? Talk to us. Let us hear your feedback on this. I'm always getting us and the fellas into trouble. My bad, guys.
Yeah. Listen, I just want to say thank you, Rodney. I appreciate your prodding and pushing that we educate our members. And so that's what we're doing tonight, is educating our members on things that needs to be particular. But we can't do it if they don't know. So Dr. Henry, you're here. How can we get our members to know the things that Rodney is expecting us to know?
Well, listen, I'm glad you asked me that question, Pastor Wade. Look, there's only one way. We have to share it. We got to share. Listen, look, Pastors Roundtable, this ministry, I'll just speak for myself. It has been a blessing learning more about the church, learning the different thoughts and ideas and how we can move mission along. And I know that a lot of people have also enjoyed this live stream and how it has been, transparent and inspirational. I would say inspirational, right? I've met some people and they said, listen, keep it going. And sometimes some people can't watch the live stream, but they'll watch the replay. So look, if this thing is good, if you feel like this ministry is vital, you have to share it. I know something is going on right now at Oakwood University, the alumni. I understand all that, but guess what? Pastors Roundtable is on right now.
Hey.
Share and share again.
All right, good stuff, gentlemen. Hey, we've got a great show tonight, great conversation this evening. Let's tell them, Dr. Henry, since you're in the program, what's on the table tonight, my friend? Talk to us.
Well, listen, for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about finances, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about finances from the church perspective. We've been talking about the capital campaign. And now we are going to deal with the personal finance. But guess what? The church finances is made up of the people. So the people make the church's finances. So today we're going to talk about personal finance. And I kind of like this title, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly tonight. Ooh. That's what we're going to deal with.
All right, then. All right. The good, the bad, and the ugly. All right. So that's what's on the table, ladies and gentlemen. Roger, talk to us, man. Who is at the table tonight?
Well, listen, here at Pastors Roundtable, we don't slack on the guests, the heavy hitters that we have. So tonight, I'm just excited to have Keith Alex Garnett, who is from the West Coast. He is a chief financial officer, and he is here to share with us with all the knowledge he has. I'm not even going to walk there. He is certified, licensed, trained, prepared, ready to help us in this arena of talking about personal finance, talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. Oh, Keith Lee has it ready for us, and so we look forward to having him on in our conversation today.
All right, well, let's bring him on, ladies and gentlemen. Alex Garnett in the house tonight. Greetings, Doc. We are excited, delighted to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time on a Friday evening on the West Coast to come and to join us tonight. Listen, just before we give you an opportunity to address our audience tonight, Keith, we're going to have a word of prayer to start this thing off. Dr. Henry, would you pray for us, man, as we get out the gate tonight?
Let's pray. Father, again, Lord, we are just so happy, Father, and elated that you have guided us today, Father, to have this program dealing with personal finances. God, I know that you have entrusted us with finances. Now, Lord, we have to do our very best so that we can make a substantial contribution, Father, to the mission that you have charged us to have. So, Father, again, bless this conversation tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. All right, Keith, we're going to just give you an opportunity tonight to talk to our audience, to address them, give us a little wider scope, perhaps, of where you are, what you're doing, what's going on with you. You can shout out your friends, your cousins, your aunties, your uncles, and them. We're going to give you about 39.8 seconds, and the time is yours.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be on. This is my first time being on the podcast. It's my first time being on any podcast. So I'm just amazed that you even thought about inviting me. So let me make sure I can get in the middle of my screen here. How am I looking? Am I looking okay?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pastor Paul, Pastor Wade, and Pastor Henry. I do have to give a shout out. I see my brother is in the chat here. Woo, I see you. Good to hear that you're on tonight. And you can make sure I stay on the right path here. You can call me out, but just text me first. No, I'm just kidding. Woo, it's good to see you on, by the way. I'm excited about this opportunity. Let me give you a little context. The way I do business, I try to be very transparent. I feel like I'm away from the middle, but let's go ahead. So I try to be very transparent. You'll ignore the tie today. I just came from a meeting and came straight here, but I was told this is a very relaxed environment and we're all here to share. And it really speaks to me. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. Number one, by way of background, thanks for the introduction. My background is actually in corporate finance. My background is not directly in personal finance. So why am I even talking to you tonight? Should I hang up now? Well, hang with me a little bit. I'll tell you why. The first thing I've discovered, I've been in corporate finance now for, I don't know, too many years. Let's just say I graduated from business school in the late 90s. And I've been with large companies. I've been with a big four accounting firm and done corporate transactions of various size and proportions. And what I found interesting is that I just assume, well, most people know finances. They don't need to talk. I don't need to talk to people about that. And I had an experience where a friend of ours, she lost her husband, and she asked me to come and talk with her. I thought, oh, maybe she wants an insurance agent. Maybe she needs someone to sell annuities. But what I realized, she just needed to have the right context to understand finance. And spending time with her was just as much a blessing to her as it was to me. When I realized, wait, there's a lot of information that people need just to understand what should they be doing, where should they go. So I would tell you, despite 25 years in corporate finance, and I'm currently as the CFO of a biotech company right now, despite doing a lot in that space, I find the more time I spend sharing some basic tactical knowledge with people is the more rewarding it is for me. So happy to be here, happy to share. One last disclaimer. I am very comfortable with what I know, but I'm even more comfortable with what I don't know. So if I get a
Okay.
question
All
and I
right.
don't know, I have no problem saying I have no idea. But what I would tell you, though, I will often do like what my mentors have done to me. I don't know the answer to that. I won't pontificate on something I don't know about, but I will point you in the right direction as best as I can. Is that helpful?
That sounds
All
good.
right.
Awesome.
I like it.
As
So
you see, I'm ready
listen,
to make myself known.
before we get started there, Keith, if you can
Sure.
adjust your camera, I want to say to the right, but it might be there we
Right.
go. And
Yeah, I was
that way
trying to get in the
you'll
middle
be
of the
in the
screen,
center.
but there's a
Yeah,
delay here. How's this?
that's great. That's much better
Perfect.
than it was. Excellent.
Okay, no worries.
All right. All right.
Okay.
So
So, Raj, take us in, man.
let's jump right in just a little bit. Listen, when we talk about personal finance, I mean, at the granular level, all I could think about is whatever money is in my pocket. Maybe what money is in my checking account. Maybe what's money in my savings account, no, my piggy bank. But what are the key pillars? When I was doing research for this show, I realized that personal finance has its own lane, and it isn't those things I shared. What are the key pillars or building blocks of personal finance that everyone should be aware of? Share with us.
Excellent. Thanks for that question. So, first of all, you're going to find that I try to be as very practical as possible. I'll try to give some information and then try to make it as practical as possible. When I think about the personal finance, I definitely think about, yes, the money I have in my pocket. But here's the truth of the matter. Whether you have $1, $5, 100, 1,000, million, it doesn't matter. The
Mm,
principles are all the same, right? Principles are all the same. If you spend more money than you make, you on the road to financial ruin. Period.
Mercy.
Whether your monthly bill is high or low, it really doesn't matter. And secondly, you have to be very mindful of what you're doing.
mm,
Um, in terms of very specific building blocks, I did take a few notes, a couple of things I want to touch on, and you'll guide me as I give you some insights here. I'm going to call a few words that are definitely associated with personal finance, right? Words like budgeting, which I know in
Mm,
my house sometimes is a bad word, but let's go with it. Budgeting, saving,
mm,
investing,
mm,
managing your debt, emergency fund, insurance, retirement planning,
mm,
financial goal setting, and even estate planning, right? These are all building blocks. But where do we start, right? Where does anybody really start? The number one thing I think is important with personal finance is know where you are.
mm.
Don't
Mm.
create a roadmap of where you want to go. Don't focus on
mm.
these wonderful dreams. Remember, dreams without a plan is a recipe for disaster. You got to have a
My
strategy, right?
Lord.
But
My Lord.
understand first, where are you today?
Define
And the first
reality.
thing I tell
Yeah.
people, first thing I tell people to do is you have to spend some time on it. Go ahead
Okay.
and find out over the past 30 days, last month or this month, what did I actually spend? Not whether it's right, whether it's wrong. We're not trying to decide if I spent too much or not enough. You just want to start off by saying, what have I spent for the past 30 days? And then if you go back another 30 days, well, what did I spend then? And it will show you where you are. For example,
Mm,
you sit down, you go through your bills. Everyone has bills. I don't care who it is. You go through your bills and you determine I've spent X amount of dollars last month. And the month before, I spent even more. And you find in those two data points, there's a little bit of work involved here. Just find in those two data points what is consistent. What do I always run into? Now, I'm not saying, okay, well, I decided to put new tires in my car, so that's part of my regular expenses. No, that didn't happen every month, right? But start by figuring out what do you do every month that you can avoid. I'm going to assume you're going to see some things pop up, right? You're going to see your
Okay.
rent or mortgage or housing costs, right? You're going to see that. So these things that you see every month, you start with that. You write those things down. And then you look at the other things as you go along that come up that you like to keep doing every month, and you write that down. Immediately, the first thing you'll notice is, oh, wow, I've spent this much that month, or I've spent this much the last month. I think starting there is the beginning part. And then from there, we can go further. So I'll pause there because I can go on all day, but I want to give us a starting point. My big thing is figure out where you are before we figure out where we need to go. Does that help to start you off there?
Yes, sir.
That's
Yes,
good.
sir.
That's
Now,
good.
now
That's
I did
good.
say that in my house, sometimes the word budgeting is not a fun topic. But what we're basically talking about budgeting. But people think of budgeting in the context of, oh, I can only spend X, I can only spend Y. No, 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 that's not budgeting. Budgeting is once you understand where you are, you modify as you go along. If you've been spending $1,000 a month for the past 10 years, I think it's foolish to come along and says, oh, by the way, your $1,000 a month now needs to be 500. It's
Oh
not going to
my.
happen. It's not going to happen, right? So I like practical things, right? Okay,
Mm.
I've been spending 1,000. I've only brought home 800, and I've been putting 200 in a credit card. We'll talk about that later. You start modifying things over time because now you know where you are, and you can see the shortfall, and from there you can start moving forward. So I'm using that as a base of our conversation for understanding budgeting. Is it helpful?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Boy,
yeah.
I tell you.
That sounds. It sounds like, who is that? Is that Stanley that does the or no. I think that's Seven Habits.
Ramsey?
Kobe?
Somebody who's one of our leadership gurus who says one of the first jobs, most important jobs of a leader is to define reality. So even if you're going to define, if you're going to be leading your home or your own personal finances, it sounds like you're saying one of the first things you have to do is you have to be um, willing and able to define that really I am spending more than I am bringing in, or I am spending on stuff that is frivolous that I don't need, or I need to make more money, or I need to spend. That sounds like it's just, and that's sometimes that's hard for people to do, just to be honest.
Ab-
No, well, not
Absolutely.
so. I'm going to say this because I have been there too, and somebody else in this chat has got to be have been there as well. We have access to our banking records and all that kind of stuff on our phones, on our statements. But I suspect there's somebody out there who has gone for months, maybe years, without looking at their statement. They just went, if there's money there to spend, they only look at it if there's a problem, but they won't go to look at it to assess it, to figure out how can I create a plan out of the reality that I am currently living in financially. And you're saying that's a problem.
That's a problem. Especially, information is power, right? We can access information so readily. I tell my children all the time, they ask me a question. I said, well, wait a second. You have more power in the palm of your hand than the technology that they use to put somebody on the moon. And they look at me like I'm crazy. But the truth is, they have access to information. So why not use it to your benefit? A couple things you'll discover, by the way, if I may add to it too, is that quite often, if you look at your statements on a regular basis, you might find things that will surprise you.
Hmm.
Mm.
You'll find things surprise you. Why do I say that? A friend of mine looked at their statement the other day, and there was $1.16 that has been charged every other week on their card. $1.16. Most people are like, oh, what is that? No big deal. And when they finally took stock of it, they said, wait a second. And they called the bank. Would you believe that $1.16 has been appearing every 2 weeks for the past 5 years, and they didn't even know it?
Wow.
5 years. Now, do the math for those who want to. I'm like, that's
So
real money.
Yeah, that's like $3,000-$4,000.
They lost the money. And of course, the bank was like, well, we can only recover a certain amount of time period. So that's lost money. So number one, you'd be surprised information you discover. But let's go back for a second. In our age too, where in our society, and I know this is international, and I'm impressed how many people from different places are here, but generally, I'm going to speak from a U.S. perspective. Credit cards are so prevalent, so easy to get and to use that quite often we deceive ourselves into where we are, into understanding where we are, because the credit card in our instant gratification society, and I'm not going to pontificate here, but people use credit cards to buy things for convenience and later discover, or maybe not discover until it's too late, that guess what? You can't afford it.
Mm.
Whatever it is you bought on that credit card, you can't afford it. I get it. It says the minimum payment is X dollars. Oh, I can make the X dollars. But we can go ahead and talk about the mystery of interest for those who find it a mystery. But recognize that these cards are charged you an exorbitant amount of interest. So that little cup of whatever you buy on a regular basis can cost you far more than you think if you put it in a credit card. So my suggestion is, as you take stock of where you are, make sure that if you use your credit cards, make sure you're using it responsibly. Notice I didn't say not to use it. I just said make
Mm.
sure you're using it responsibly. I have a friend of mine. He uses his credit card for everything, but he's in a fortunate position, not my testimony, where at the end of each month, he has no problem paying off the balance in full. Now,
Mm.
all those who raise your hand, I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying at this point, if you're in that great situation, that's great, but you're still responsible to know where you are and make sure you're staying within your means. So I just wanted to touch on credit cards for a second.
Hmm. Let me ask you a question. So we're talking about these key pillars, and one of the things that you said a word there that I know is not too popular, and that this thing called budget, right? that we
Yes,
don't like the budget, but we're talking about pillars again, the building blocks. How
sure.
important is it to include God in your budget? I mean, should we, because we have a lot of bills, we have a lot of things. Should we do our budget first, and then whatever's left over, then we give that to God? How important is God in our budget?
Wow. I think well, first of all, if you believe that all things are made possible through him, then you recognize you have to start with him in every aspect of your life, and finances should not be excluded. I believe in tithing. I believe that's where you should start. You give the tenth to the Lord, and you'll be amazed to know what you can do with 90%. Now, guess what? Most people I know who are experts in finance, they don't understand that, because if you take off 10%, how can you have more than if you did not take off the 10%? But
That's right.
I think that the Bible gives us certain economic principles that the average man doesn't understand. I've always
Mm.
found, I've always found that the more consistent I am in my tithing is the more my finances exceed my expectations.
Mm.
I didn't say
Mm.
I got rich. I didn't say that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
didn't say I got more money. I didn't say that either. But I'm saying that the more faithful I am in my tithe in this faith journey is the further the 90% is able to go. So to
Wow.
answer your question, I think that's the starting point. That's just my personal testimony on that.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. I remember I had a friend who was going through some financial trouble. And so he went to a financial advisor, and they looked at what he was spending, like you said, the last 30 days and 60 days. And they said, well, look, there's a little item right here called tithe. Can't you just ask your pastor for a pass so you can pay some of these other bills? But what you're saying is that this tithe thing, or just giving to God, you can do so much more with what you have left over when you start to give. I think that's real important as we talk about building blocks of personal finances. But I have another question here. What are some of the common financial mistakes people make? Now, you mentioned a few of those things about credit card and so
Yes.
forth, but how can these things be avoided? How can we avoid some of these financial mistakes?
Sure. So there are a couple of things that I was thinking about when I pondered the question. My first mistake that comes to my mind, I don't know if it's the most paramount, but the first one that comes into my mind is that it's never too late to start. Start what?
Mm.
A lot of people say, you know what, I'll save next month. Oh, I'll invest next time. Oh, maybe I'll get insurance when my money is better. Maybe I'll do wait. Time is money is what we say in the industry, but I think the common mistake is to delay. I think once you take hold of their finances where they are today, start saving today. And if you haven't paid your tithe, pay it today, I guess tomorrow, whatever works. But my point is, I think delay is one of the common mistakes people make, right? That's number one. Number two, you don't have to have all of the answers in order to move forward. Right, there's a lot of information in the space, and my disclaimer, I should probably tell you that I'm no longer licensed in terms of selling stocks or insurance. I don't do any of that. I actually provide insight that I think is practical from my experience, and if And what I found is that there's a gap between when a person says, I'm just starting off, and then they go meet with a financial advisor who's trying to sell them an insurance or whatever it is. And I'm not going to badmouth financial advisors in any way, but I think there's a gap where people need to spend some more time learning about some concepts, right? Learning a little bit about insurance, learning a little bit about investing. What is a stock? What are these different? What is a Bitcoin? I mean, doing a little bit of learning, I think, is important that people spend some time with it. And I get it; not everybody likes finance. I actually love finance. I'm sure you can see that. But but spending a little time to educate oneself, I think, is important. That was number two, and the third one is that don't be afraid to ask for help. A lot of people
Mm.
would often say, well, I don't want to talk to anybody about my finances because it's a private personal thing. Okay, it is a private personal thing. I agree. But with the lack of knowledge, people perish. If you're in a situation where you can't figure it out, I'll give an example, is that a friend of mine wanted to buy a house, but he didn't know he didn't know where to start, quite honestly. And he came to me and said, Keith, I want to ask you a question. He said, what does it mean to have equity? And I said to him, you know what? I'm glad you asked that question because he felt ashamed and that he didn't know what the word equity meant. But in my
Mhm.
mind, as I said, I like to be able to advise and fill that gap. Not only were we able to talk about equity because he asked the question, we were able to talk about what does it mean to put a deposit on a house? What does it mean to get a higher interest rate? What does it mean to buy down the points? These are things that he did not know and had delayed buying a house because he didn't have anybody to talk to. So my thing is, ask the questions. I hope
Mm.
you all can reach out to somebody who is knowledgeable in the space, who will be patient enough to share the insight without being condescending or demeaning in any way. So those are some of the common mistakes that I hope people will avoid.
Wow,
Mm.
wow. I think one of the mistakes, well, I'm beginning to realize because I think I was there many times, is not wanting to know. I think
Yeah.
we just
Mm.
willing to be willfully bliss
Mhm.
about it, and it's a major. I think it's a major piece in terms of a mistake that people make about their finances. And what encouragement can you give to those who feel right now they don't want to know because they just don't want to know?
They're in denial.
They're in denial.
So, I really believe you got to focus on the reality of a situation to take hold of it, to make it better. I would encourage people to be proactive. You can always get to a goal if you start, right?
Mm.
And no matter how bleak the situation may look, like a friend of mine says, I don't like going to the doctor because they only give you bad news. Well, you can't address the bad news unless you go to the doctor, right? So if you're in denial and you don't want to address it, I would encourage people to get past that mental hurdle and
Mm.
recognize your financial situation is not the worst out there. You'd be surprised to know, and I'll even give you a further surprise. Two things that surprised me. Number one, a lot of people would be surprised how high net worth individuals or high income earners wind up living paycheck to paycheck. I know several people, six-figure earners with no problem. Even one that was a seven-figure earner, living paycheck to paycheck. I
Mm.
know another person who in a situation where they make below minimum wage and they own three homes. So my point is, your situation is not as bad as you think it is. It can always be improved. Just don't delay.
Wow.
Mm.
So, Keith, you've got two different types of people I want to ask you a question about. You've got one, this
Sure.
is a young person who's just got their first job at McDonald's,
Nice.
their first paycheck. They're that 16, 17-year old. And they're saying, and they've heard over and over, you got to have a financial plan. You got to have a personal plan.
Mm.
So you've got that person. Where do they start? What do they do? And I want to throw another scenario at you because there's another person who they did the McDonald's job. They went to college. They landed the other job, but they've been that person like Roger was talking about who just didn't want to know. They weren't paying attention. But now they're 45. Now
Mm.
Mm.
they're in their 50s. And now they're saying, okay, I need to start paying attention now. Is
Wow.
there a difference of starting? Is there hope for that? Talk to us about the planning in those. How does the planning differentiate between that 16-year-old and that 45 to 50 something who's just now saying, I want to start paying attention?
Sure, great question. So there are a couple elements that come to mind. The first thing, I keep looking up because I see some birds out here, but anyhow, so the first thing that comes to my mind is the most important part in my mind of finance, and I think you're talking a little bit about investing is what you're really talking about here is discipline. That's the first thing. It's discipline. If you do something consistently, you will get to a certain goal. You go beyond where you are today. So the person who is very young, just starting out, I'm trying to be as practical as possible. First thing I would suggest that they do, if they don't already have a savings account, because I just discovered a lot of people don't have a savings account, so I'm going to level set here. Start a savings account. Okay, so
Oh,
you are 16 year old, you already have a savings account. Okay, great. Take it to the next step. Start putting in whatever percentage of your weekly monthly income, whatever that percentage you can afford. Start putting it into an investment vehicle of some kind. Once again, I'm not here to suggest one or the other, but things like a 401k or a individual retirement account. Now I get it. You're 16 years old. Why are we talking about retirement? Great question. But my point is, we'll come back to that in a second. Start consistently putting monies aside. Develop that habit, Mr. 16-year-old. The habit of putting the money aside and not using it. Start that as the first habit. Second
hmm
habit is explore ways where you can invest the money. Investing is important because if you're young and you understand the power of compound interest or understand the power of interest, the little you put away every month can make a huge difference on the long term. When That's for the young person. For the older person who's maybe in their, I didn't catch the number you said, maybe 40s, maybe 50s, understand now whatever their goal is for their investment goals, their time horizon is different, right? They don't
hmm
have they don't have another 40, 50, 60 years. I'm being general here. So you have to make sure that you now figure out what your goals are over a shorter period of time, and you have to be a little bit more aggressive in your investing. The 16-year-old may get by in putting $50 a month into an account, and we can do the math and see that in 20 years they'll be in a good spot. But the person who is 45, 50, who wants to presumably retire within a reasonable amount of time, once again, I'm talking about a conventional route. I'm not talking about entrepreneurs and risk takers. But the person who's later on in life, who's in their 40s and 50s, must understand that now, if they have missed all those years behind them, they have to be aggressive. So if they are in a job that has a 401k, they need to max it out, meaning they need to put the most they can in there. Now, of course, we want you to keep your lights on. We want you to keep yourself fed, but you have to make sure you're making some personal sacrifices. You got to be more aggressive because time is not on your side, shall we say, right? Time is kind of behind you. So whatever you can do, put the most you can in there. And if there's a matching program, I don't know how detailed we want to go into some of these items, but basically be aware of the fact that time horizon is very important when it comes down to finance and investing. Discipline, and be aware of how long it would take to get to a goal so you can adjust how much you're putting away. I hope that's a general enough an answer because we can get as detailed as we want to. I know I touched on 401k, and I know some people aren't familiar with that. I said IRA, but I want to make sure there's something tactical. Remember, don't hesitate. Start now. Start putting money away if you're 16 or 45. And one last comment, too. It's important to set goals in life as well, right? Set goals. You got to have a goal and then come up with a strategy.
Mhm.
So, 16-year-old, what is your goal? What do you want to do?
hmm
I'll make some assumptions here, right? To just say for the sake of savings and depriving yourself in life, I'm not sure if I agree with that. But you set some goals. I want to do this. I want to buy a car, buy a house, so forth and so on. The 45, 50-year-old, I want to retire in 10 years. What does that look like?
Mhm.
Right. And then
Good.
now we're kind of touching on retirement. What does that look like? Because here's the thing, there is no mystery in finance, believe it or not. It's just information and action. Information and action. You need to get the information to understand what is available to me. What can I invest in? What savings account? What are these things? Which one is better? Which one's worse, or whatever? And then two, what action can I take? There's no mystery. You put in $1 in the bank, and well, I shouldn't talk about banks. I'm not a fan of that. But anyhow, you put $1 in your savings vehicle, and they give you 10 cents every year. Then at the end of the year, you have $1.10. If you didn't spend it,
Mhm.
If you do that consistently, you can do the math. Now, from there, we can get very creative with it and so forth. And you can talk to your financial advisor how to maximize it. But action and information are the two key things, in my opinion, when it comes down to investing.
Wow. Wow.
All right.
So
Good.
you said something interesting. I just want to back up a little bit. You talked
Sure.
about the person in their 16s, 16 age group will we need to start thinking about putting it away. What if they're not, you talk about IRA and 401ks, but what if their job or their situation does not allow them or give them the information towards that? Is the simple savings account enough for that long term of a planning?
Great question. Okay, so get a little more tactical. The answer is no. Especially if you're aware of the interest rates being offered in savings accounts these days, it's very minimal. All right, I won't denigrate anyone who's in a savings account in any way. It's very minimal. My point being is this: information is key.
Mm,
You can start as the 16-year-old starts off. Remember, I'm focusing on discipline, putting away $5 a week, putting away $10, whatever the number is, doing it every week. Just like how you try to be disciplined and learn to be disciplined with your tithe, you do the same thing. Be disciplined with your savings, put it away. And then as that starts to grow and you learn more, you find out, oh, wait a second, I can put it in this investment vehicle. I don't know if you want me to get very specific or tactical, but I want to make sure we're progressing the idea from, well, I have a small job right now, quote unquote, no disrespect. I have a small job and I'm trying to see if I can save a little bit. What else can I do? Savings account is just a starting point, but you really want to get more information to figure out what's next. And you let me know, Pastor Wade, how tactical we want to get in this conversation.
as comfortable as you are.
Okay, no problem, no problem. So one of our kids, who's also a teenager, the first thing I said to him was, "You are young, and at this point, I want you to put monies into your savings account and discipline, but I want you to also put half of your money. Did I say half or a third, whatever it is? I want you to make sure that you, at your tender age of teenage years, make sure you put a third of whatever you save into an aggressive investment. What is that? I
Mm,
said to my children, and I don't know if it's helpful to anybody else, I said, I'm old enough to remember when they introduced this thing called the information superhighway. You guys are probably too young to remember that. No, I'm just kidding. What is this information superhighway? Oh, lo and behold, it became the internet. Oh, lo and behold, it changed the way the world operates. I said, you guys, young, keep your eyes out for what you find to be not popular, but where's the trend going? What is this thing called artificial intelligence? We don't
mm,
really know what that is. I guarantee you that's going to change the way the world does business. So I said to my son, I said, I want you to make sure that every week you find something with the word artificial intelligence in it and read it. And then as you become knowledgeable, invest a third of your savings in something related to artificial intelligence. He looked at me like I was
wow.
crazy. Why?
Wow.
Because he's in his teenage years. In
Mhm.
20 years from now, however it manifests itself, and I love that rule. I just saw that you said you bought Amazon in 2001. However it manifests itself over the next 20 years, he may benefit, he may not, but I'm willing to bet he is. And number two, I want to train his mind to not just follow the pack. I want to train
Mm,
his mind to say, can you spot the trends before it happens? Jeff Bezos sat in his room and said, hey, I'm going to put these books online. And they looked at him like he was crazy. And quite honestly, well, we're on social media. I won't say anything bad about Jeff Bezos. But anyhow, some people thought he was crazy. But needless to say, we've seen how the story changed over time. Books was merely the starting point. Look what has emerged to today. So
mm,
I tell my kids, I want you to save consistently and then start finding ways you can be aggressive with at least a third of that savings. So what? It's $20 a month. I respect $20. $1 is a dollar earned. But put away $4 and find a way. And by the way, these young people these days, and by the way, I refer to them young people respectfully because now that I have a kid in college, I guess I'm no longer a young person, right? I'm clearly middle aged. But here's what it is: they now have access to platforms and investment portals that we never had growing up.
mhm, mhm.
Robinhood, they can
Yeah.
open their
Wow.
account with 20
Yeah.
bucks
Yeah.
and buy a
Mhm.
fraction of a share. So I
Right.
would suggest, and I hope I'm being helpful, let's start off by thinking, let's discipline. I'm going to save X dollars, whatever it is. Number two, I'm going to take a third of that and try to invest it somewhere. And
Okay.
let me add to that. I don't want I use my son as an example, so I make it personal, but I don't want him to invest in something because he wants to get a big pop and sell it the next day and say, oh, I made 20% return. I'm not even interested in that. What I want him to do, spot the trends, position himself for the long game. Don't buy a stock, I told him, don't buy a stock unless you understand what they do and believe that they will be around in 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
I don't want him to, I'm not asking him to gamble. No, I want you to be a very disciplined investor, put money aside, find opportunities to invest, and write it out. He's young. He can
Mm.
have failures. Companies can go bust, but be intentional about it is what I try to communicate to him. I see you guys looking at me like as if I may have been given too much information. Am I on the right track? Is this good?
No, that's good. Real good.
Oh no, I'm taking
You,
notes. You're on point.
Okay.
I'm actually sitting here saying, where were you when I was 16?
Yeah.
let me,
Yeah, I
let
was
me,
thinking that earlier too, because we heard when I was 16, we didn't
stop.
hear anything about investing. We heard
Oh,
save. You got to save some money. That we heard that, but some of the specifics and some of the strategies and things like that, we never heard that in my circles anyway when we were a teenager. And I think more importantly to this conversation, and somebody brought it up in the chat, is that we did not hear it in church. You would
Mm,
think that you would have heard it in school, maybe, or maybe you had a parent or an uncle or somebody. But there's a question: is I mean, that's a relevant question: is how much role or effort should the church play
yeah,
in helping people develop personal finance strategies?
like
Is that
stocks. Like, should the church, right, Pastor Paul, like, should the church talk about stocks? Should we
mm,
talk about Bitcoin? Like, how much should we talk? I'm talking about when you have these young people. Like, what? I'm with you, Pastor Paul. What's the role? How can we portray this or teach this to or is it right? Or should we just say, hey, we can't, what can we do?
Okay. Hey, you know what? So Dion, I actually wrote out a question on this because I
Oh, you
was
did?
ready.
Oh, okay.
Here we
Go
go.
ahead, brother.
I
Go ahead.
wanted to structure it and cater it to
Do it.
PRT
Do it.
mission and structure. Here we go. So, what role does personal finance play in the overall mission of the church? And does the church or should the church have any structures? You see what I did there, Dion? Mission and structure.
mm.
Have any structures that can help
You try
facilitate,
to tie this thing together.
nurture, train, educate, coach, or maximize that role? What's the role of the church? Should they have a role?
Great. I have a couple of thoughts on that. My own personal opinion. Without knowledge, the people perish. Right. I believe
Mhm.
that I believe that the church should really meet the needs of the people where they are,
Okay.
and I think that should also apply to finances. I think the church is a great place to educate people. Like, for example, our stewardship department at our church, they've developed a program. I won't say the name of it as I'm not endorsing it or anything like that. But there is a program where they have, I think it's a 6 or 8 week program where they have people come in from the community and church members and talk about very specific things as part of the stewardship ministry. Now,
Wow.
when I was growing up,
Mm.
I thought stewardship was about how do I get people to, they're just trying to get more people to put more money in the offering plate. But no, I like the fact that the stewardship should be very practical. Another ministry by which we're meeting the needs of people where there are. That's what helps the church to continue to be relevant in this modern time. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a pastor, so I'm not going to preach here, right? Of course, but don't get me wrong. The church has a role, and it will spread the gospel, absolutely. But if we're not meeting the needs of the people where they are, we're missing
Mhm.
something, right?
Mm.
And secondly, if we are preaching to we collectively, if we're preaching to people about the gospel and encouraging them to give to the church, but they can't keep their lights on, or for that matter, they're losing money because they don't understand finances, I think we would be missing something. So I think the church has a role to educate people. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to get the church in trouble. I don't think the church needs to go out there and tell people you need to invest in this company or that company. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with having programs at the church. Like at our church, we have a program, tangential example here. We have a program where we teach English as a second language.
Okay.
Now, what does that have to do with the church? What does that have to do with religion? They're not proselytizing. They're not doing that. But what they're doing, they're meeting the needs of the people where they are. People in our community do not speak English. So we teach them that. So why not with finances? There are people in our community that do not understand finances, not excelling their finances because of lack of knowledge. So long and short of the question is, absolutely. I think the more the church meets the needs of people where they are in a very practical sense, is the more the church will be relevant to the modern times. That's just my opinion on that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Let me. I don't know when we're going to take that break, Pastor Wade. I don't know if we're taking it now or are we just going to go straight ahead.
Hey, let's go ahead and do it now. Let's do it.
Okay,
now.
Let's take a break.
Good stuff. Brother Garnett, we're going to ask you to sit tight. We're going to come right back to you in about 3 minutes. We're going to take a little break right here.
No problem.
If you are just joining us this evening, we want to welcome you to this 13th edition of the Pastors Roundtable, season number 8. What's that?
13th Sabbath.
13th Sabbath. Wow, look at that. Look at that. Listen, if you're just joining us and you've missed the beginning of this show, Roger, there's something right above my head where they can go to find out not just this one, but what else will they find there?
Listen, you will be able to find did I say every? I said every episode of Pastors Roundtable, not just the 12 before or even the 13 with this season. You will find every episode that we have done from season 1 to season 8. And you are welcome to join and look and get excited about what God is doing in your life through the topics we have here at the Pastors Roundtable.
Are they going to?
How many seasons passed away?
8.
I was going to say, how many seasons? 8 seasons. My. 8 seasons.
I'm wondering if they're going to find the very first episode on there. We didn't even have a YouTube channel when we did episode number
sure
1.
Didn't.
No.
Matter of fact, I come to think of it, I think we streamed that first one to my church's Facebook page or YouTube channel or something like that. We didn't have our own space.
We started small. We started small.
Wow.
We put a little bit away, and look what God has done.
Wow. Look at that.
Look, and by the way, as we're talking about where to go to watch these episodes, remember when we go to our next season, that's season what? 9. Oh my. Season 9. Remember, season 9 is going to be a part 2 season, where we're going to feature a lot of the same topics that we've done in the past, but we're doing a part 2. You know, every show we say part 2, part 2, part 2. But this time, we want you to participate. And so there will be, before the end of the live stream tonight, we'll let you know, or maybe Pastor Wade, you can tell us, are we ready for our people to participate so that they can vote for the show that they would like to see a part 2 on?
We are not ready with it tonight, but it will be on our Facebook page and in our Facebook group. If you're not a member of the Pastors Roundtable Facebook group, you want to become a member so you can be part of shaping season 9 of the Pastors Roundtable.
Listen, can we give it a dry run, a test run tonight? So those of you that are watching tonight, just in the chat, if just off the top of your head you remember an episode that you'd like to see another part 2, just throw that up in the chat, like right now, this evening. Now, we're going to give you that more formal thing to do it, but I'm really curious to see.
Let's do it.
To see what you guys are thinking, even now if you're watching. And if you're watching this on the replay, just throw it up in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever you're watching. But make sure that you go back later to the I see Stephanie in the chat saying it's going to be there. I see some coming in. Stephanie said the LGBTQ. We said we were going to do a part 2 to that. We never got around to that. Okay, I see that. But yeah, throw them up. We're very curious to see what's going to happen with that. All right, last thing before we get back to our guest, gentlemen. We talked at the beginning of the show that people have been helping and supporting this ministry to be able to do what we do. We found out, gentlemen, that when we started this, we said, oh, we're just going to get on and talk. And then we started realizing, oh, it costs to get the cameras. It costs to do the lights. It costs to replace the computers and the lights as time goes by. It costs to use the software. There's a subscription. It costs to put the music in the background. Those are a lot of things that we didn't factor in when we started this thing. We were just gung-ho, wide-eyed, and excited to get in the space. And we started finding out, hey, Restream costs some money. And it's a lot of money. I think we pay, $500 a year for that subscription. Each of us pay another $300, almost $400 for the software that we use per year. Not to mention your microphones and all of those things. If somebody is watching tonight and says, hey, I want to make sure that the Pastors Roundtable can make it all the way to the end of season 9. Help us out, fellas. What can they do? How can they help?
Well, listen, you can go to the bottom of the page, prt.live, and go to the support, and you are welcome to help us make it all the way to the end of season 9. We're just excited just to be here, to be in the space. We'll do what it takes, because this is not our ministry, it's God's ministry. And but we need your help, and whatever you can do to help us, 5, 10, 15, 500, 1,000, whatever you feel moved to share with us, you are welcome to do that on the support page.
All right, sounds good. Okay, hey, let's are we ready to bring back our guest? We ready?
Bring him back in. Let's bring him back in.
Here we go. If you are just joining us tonight, our guest is K. Alex Garnett. He is a financial guru. I'm just throwing that in there. That's not his official title. But we are excited and delighted to have him with us on this edition of the Pastors Roundtable as we wrap up season number 8. We are in the middle of a conversation about personal finance. We've talked about some strategies and some ideas how to grow and to plan and to be, what was the word that we used? Disciplined when it comes to doing personal finance. We're going to pick up where we left off. I'm not sure who was that?
Dr. Henry.
Dr. Henry
was about to throw his question in.
Right. So listen, got a question here, but I like the way that you answered that previous question that Pastor Paul posed. And I just want to kind of dig a little bit into that question a little bit. So are you saying that the church should explain about stocks? Because some people feel like stocks are evil, like it's sin. Some people are on that, how would you, let me just say, how would you explain that to somebody? If somebody said, look, the stocks is a sin, like, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to play a stock. What would you say? What would be your response to somebody like that?
Wow. That's an amazing question. So first of all, I think it's important that one of the things I see at my home with our children, I say to them, truth will always be spoken in our home. And I think that the truth has to be spoken. The notions, perspectives, and opinions is not truth, right? The fact of the matter is all of these instruments are tools that if you know how to use a tool, it can get you to where you need to go, right? And I get it. A lot of people don't understand the tools, and not a lot of people inclined to use the tools. And some people have had bad experiences with tools, right? I've seen quite a bit of damage that be caused from a hammer, and then you've seen great structures built from a hammer. I think that yes, at the church we should educate people about these fundamental principles that include stocks when it comes down to investing, and it includes insurance when it comes down to investing and planning. I absolutely think so.
Wonderful, I like it. Because the retirement that we have, right? A lot of that is based, right? On stocks and so forth. I mean, everything that we do. Go ahead, Pastor Paul.
We don't do this often, but Dr. Henry, can you ask me that question, please?
What would you say, Pastor Paul? Hey,
Listen,
1
I am.
minute now. 1 minute. 1 minute. You can't.
We are theologians. We know that we can go to Scripture, and there is a story in the Bible where the Lord, and there are very few of them, where the Bible calls somebody a wicked servant. The wicked servant was the one who was given talents and did not invest it. He went and stuck it and buried it in the ground and did not create a return on it. That is the servant that the master of the household, that God looks at and says, "Thou wicked servant, I gave you a gift. I intended for you to develop it and to multiply it." That is what investing is that you take it and you invest it and you turn it over. When we go to Proverbs, what is it? 30? What's the Proverbs 30? The woman, the virtuous woman.
31.
31,
Yeah.
the Proverbs 31 woman. She is lauded for her ability to take something and invest it and turn it into something else. And so it is something that God, from a biblical perspective, not just is okay with his people doing, it is something that he expects us to do. Now, keep in mind, investing has a lot of different iterations. Only one of them is the stock market. So I'm not saying that the Bible is saying that you're a wicked servant because you did not invest in the stock market, but because you did not invest, period. That was a minute and a half. Sorry.
So I just, Pastor Paul, I like what you said, and I was thinking, so if I just put my money in the checking account, is that sin? Am I a wicked and
Because you are
slothful servant?
investing. Yeah, you're gaining interest on it. That's right. Yeah.
Checking account, right? All right. So listen, let me ask you this. So, as a ministry worker, right? How can we navigate through the challenges of managing personal finances on a potentially lower income or irregular salary? And you kind of mentioned that, but should we be concerned as ministry workers, or should we just trust the system to do it for us? Just put in my hours, and I know that the conference, they got me. North America, they got me. Or should I be doing something else? And again, you mentioned some of these things, but just to highlight them and emphasize, you could say it again. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Certainly, it's not my intention in a way to speak against any particular organization or what they may have, but conceptually, I think you, the individual, are responsible for your financial success. You start off by preparing yourself and being educated with the hopes that there be some financial reward for your effort. You took responsibility for that. Just the same, even after you are employed, I'm not sure if your question was specific to just pastors or church workers, but it is your responsibility to educate yourself and find every opportunity to advance yourself and get the most return on, like Pastor Paul said, on what God has blessed you with. I believe that organizations offer you, I should say most organizations, or some organizations would offer you different ways to invest. Just recognize those aren't the only options available to you. So yes, if you work for a conference or you work for a company, I assume everyone here is not a conference worker, but if you go into any company and they offer you a retirement or an investment vehicle, you always have the ability and the option to go outside and find your own instrument that you can invest in. I think that's important. And I think relying on one path based on what someone else has told you and not exploring other options, I think is not wise. Now, I'm not saying that the best option is not what's presented you through your employer, but you have to be a very informed investor to make sure that you figured out that, okay, the path that is offered to me, the path that I am on is the best path. I think that's a fundamental principle. Now, I have to say, to make it even more tactical, I've seen situations where I've known one or two pastors who've worked with the church, and they were surprised when they, after a long career, when they got within 2 years, I think of two people in particular, one was within 2 years or 3 years of retiring, that is when they started to ask the question of, oh, what will my retirement look like? And I thought, wow, that's a little bit late to ask that question. Once again, there's no mystery here, right? You got to have the information. You have to take action. I think, once again, going back to setting goals, I like the idea of working backwards. What do you want your retirement to look like? If you have a certain standard of living and you like to take certain vacations, drive certain vehicles, go to certain places, and you want to maintain that, what is the cost? Find out, what does that cost? Do you have an investment plan? Do you have money in a retirement plan that will give you enough to cover that cost? It's a very practical question that has to be looked at. And I recommend people not do that 1 or 2 years before retirement, right? The conference may be great, your employer may be great, but that's why another point I want to touch on, I'm glad for the question, is that I also believe that you should do financial checkups as you go along. You're
Mm-hmm.
saving in whatever vehicle, you're planning for retirement, you're working hard. It's been about 4 years. Maybe let me stop in and check, where am I in my retirement? Do I need to put more money in? Is this giving me the right return? Is the overall market doing well? These are practical questions you should ask. Now, you may not know how to assess the answer. Now, of course, if there's a precipitous downfall in the market in terms of overall and things are bad, then that's obvious. But it's reasonable to say, and it might be good to talk with an advisor. 5 years ago, I was at this point. Here I am 5 years later. How has my investment performed relative to all the other things that are out there? And are there other things I should be looking at? Oh, yes, I do have a retirement plan through my employer. This is where it got me. What else do you suggest I look at? I think that's a very practical question that everyone should ask every few years. There's no magic number, whether it should be 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, but doing it on a regular basis, I think is smart, because then you can adjust it. Let me give you an example. If you have a 401k through an employer, and I'm getting very tactical here, so if I'm going too deep, you'll let me know. If you have a 401k as an employer, and even I did the same thing, I start off in the job and just check, whatever seemed like to have the best return on it. And there's always a footnote that says past performance is not an indication of future performance. I didn't pay any attention to that. Of course, I was just starting off, glad to have a job. But then I realized 4 years down the road, I went and discovered, wait, number one, the ones I checked off in terms of the stock, the mutual funds, the ETFs, throwing out a few words here, but I discovered that several of them were not performing very well. And then I also found out that, wait a second, there were more options 4 years later than when I first started. My point being, you have to adjust every few years, or at least do an assessment every few years to make sure that you're on the path that will get you to your goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
So we're in that arena of retirement. You know, it's a word that we
Okay.
say, but we really don't know how to prepare for it. You talked
Yes.
about starting retirement planning early.
Yes.
What's the first step people can take to prepare for that retirement?
The first step. Okay. So a couple things come to mind. So with retirement, there has to be a plan, right?
Mm,
So it's not good enough to say, well, I plan to retire in a few years. So a friend of mine would say, oh, I plan to retire in a few years, but not figure out what I need to get there. What I mean by that, taking it a step further from what I said before. So there are certain elements that change in our lives as we go, right? For example, the phases of life. For those who have children and family, your priorities change over time, right? I'll just use myself as an example. Having children, I'm thinking about college is coming up. I'm thinking about the expenses associated with college. I'm thinking about what happens after college. So in my mind, my priority is shifting in that direction. But as you then shift, it depends on where you are in life, because we're talking about retirement and planning, depends on where you are in life. Retirement planning should always be part of your saving strategy. In the
mm,
early years, it may be a small part. Like for me right now, I'm not terribly focused on retirement planning in terms of my financial planning, but it is there. But as my kids get a little bit older and I get a little bit older, it becomes a larger portion. So when I talk about doing an assessment every few years, you're not just assessing to see what's available, but you also want
mm,
to assess what's important to me. My goals are changing now. I'm getting older. I'm getting closer to retirement. I want to live a certain standard of living. If I was saving, I'm just making up numbers, $5 a month towards retirement. Now that I'm getting a little older, I might want to move that $5 to $50 a month because I want to get to a certain goal, right? I think one needs to be very mindful of where they are. And remember, time is a friend and time is an enemy, right? You can't get your time back. And investing requires time, in terms, it requires you to be diligent and vigilant about your time, right? So, to your question, if I understood correctly, what's the best way to start, or what's the best approach when you're thinking about retirements? It's being mindful of where you are, your time horizon, and making sure you're putting enough money in to get you where it is. Now, the math behind that, it can be complicated, right? because it's hard to tell, one, are my investments going to give me the right return that I need in 15 years? That's a little tricky to tell, quite honestly, right? That's not a basic math class, right? But I think it's reasonable to then to get together with a financial advisor and ask them to run that number. I have been in this retirement package, whether it be a 401k, I'm just using that as an example. I've been getting a 10% return on average over the past 5 years. Where would that put me if I continue keep doing the same thing right now based on that math? There's no mystery. There's a formula that can be run and said, okay, today you have $100, tomorrow you have X dollars. And then is that enough to get you to where you are? So I think do an assessment where you are, understand how your goals, your priorities, how your priorities change over time, and shifting your financial plan as you go, I think is key.
Wow.
That's a very
Okay.
general answer. I hope that answers your question, but let's get even more practical. Let's use someone as an example. If you are within 10 years of retiring, I'm just using this as an example. If you're within 10 years of retiring, regardless of what you've done in the past, it would be smart, in my opinion, to be aggressive about how much money you're putting in what type of plan. There are certain investment vehicles that can minimize your taxes in retirement that you really want to look at. I'm just making the point here that taxes is another factor that one has to look at, right? I'm getting very tactical here, so you'll pull me back if necessary. But my point being, as you're planning it, you're investing, you're adjusting, you want to think about how taxes will impact you. It's great to say, hey, I've been saving $100 a month, but oh, wait a second. The taxes I haven't paid on, or it's going to be deferred, or it's not going to be deferred. What will it look like after taxes? Another element that one should really look at with a financial advisor.
Okay. Awesome.
So, and by the way, I don't know how much time we have. Can I bring up a topic? And I saw somebody ask the question in the chat or the comment box.
Yeah, let's
I
go.
wanted to touch on. Yeah, I want to touch on this idea about trust. And it's a very interesting concept. And once again, I'm not a specialist. I'm not selling anybody a trust, but let me tell you the concept behind it. If you owned anything that is valuable to you, you need to have a trust. If you heard nothing else tonight, and I'm talking to the audience now that's thinking about financial planning, I'm talking to the audience who's thinking about retirement. These are very mature topics. I'm not necessarily talking to the 16-year-old right now, no disrespect. But if you own anything of value that's valuable to you, you have to have a trust. Now, guess what?
Just because I know something about that, I'm going to give you this tonight. Just to make sure that sinks in.
Yes, you must have a trust. And I know a lot of people think, oh, trusts are expensive. I've even heard somebody say, oh, trusts are for rich people. I had to laugh because I said, oh, lack of knowledge. Let me give you one example of benefit for trust. One example.
Teach.
Oh, so a person has no trust. And let's say they have a family, whatever it is, a spouse and 2 children. And God forbid they die tomorrow. But guess what? They've got money saved. They've got whatever number, $500,000 saved. Wonderful. God bless them. But guess what? They don't have a trust and they die. And you think everything's wonderful, but guess what though? There's a word called probate. I don't know if people are familiar with that word. Probate is a process through which a person's assets are handed to the next generation. Now, I'm not going to get into the law. Each state is a little bit different. It is not safe to assume I have the money, I pass away, great, my wife will automatically get it. No. In some states, it has to go to the court to make a determination that the money is handed over. So I have seen a situation which I thought was so sad, and I'll come back to explain how the trust solved this in a second. I've seen a situation where a person had assets, had money, they passed away, and the spouse had to wait for the courts, which took 9 months, to release the money. The spouse had to wait 9 months to release the money to use it. So wait a second. How do you pay the rent or the mortgage during the 9 months? Is it not our money? Why am I waiting? Why does the court take so long? All of these things would be simply and easily avoided if the person had a trust set up, a legal document that says that when I pass, I want this to be passed to my spouse, person A, person B, person C. There's no probate, there's no delay. The spouse or the significant other or the designated person, I don't know the right PC word here, that person automatically receives it. That's a very
Mm,
simple example of a trust that I
mm.
believe everyone should have if you have an asset of value, right? Don't get me wrong. If you're living in an apartment right now, God bless you, and you try to make your ends meet, trust is not for you right now. No disrespect. But my point is this, though. If you have an asset of value, so for example, if you have a retirement account, if you have a house or home, these are assets with value that you want to protect. You absolutely need to have it into a trust and put it over. But don't, no despair. You'd be, excuse me, I was surprised to discover how many people in our community, however we want to describe it, as we all look very
Mhm.
similar, I'm surprised how many people in our community who have assets, who, as we say, have money, that they do not have a trust at all. And by the way, quite often the people you see with the expensive this, the expensive that, whatever this is or that is, don't look at them and think they have it all figured out. You do your own homework. And trust me, if you heard nothing else tonight, for a person who falls in this demographic, you must get a trust to protect your assets and the loved ones that you are caring for.
Wow. Okay.
Good. That's
And
good. That's
we can go
good.
deeper if you want to in terms of the trust, but that's just a high level because I just want to make sure people are familiar with that.
Well, listen, as we wrap up tonight, we've just got a few minutes left. I want to kind of go back to something that Dr. Henry brought up and part of a question that was raised earlier. Um, and that's in regards to the reason why this type of a topic and this type of a discussion is so essential for a people of faith and for the church. I think that the three of us here that have pastored, all of us have been a part of a church. We know that oftentimes one of the biggest fights and squabbles and sources of malcontent or discontent within a church business meeting or a church board meeting is over money. But better yet, over the lack thereof. And so we'll get up on Sabbaths, and our tendency is to try to kind of guilt our members into, giving God more money, giving them because we need it for this renovation project. We need to buy this thing. When we're trying to send our kids to Wyoming at the Pathfinder camper, and we don't have enough money. We need, to do this ministry and that ministry, and oftentimes we're shaking people down. It's not really like that, but you know where that goes. And it's like it seems like it would make sense instead of trying to get more money out of people, that you can get more money out of people if you put more money into people.
Into people.
Teaching them how to better their financial situations. It's almost a what's the word? It's a, you're benefiting, the church is benefiting from making sure that their members and their people are educated, that they are taught, that they are coached on personal finance, because church finance is funded through personal finance. And so we just want to encourage those of you that are watching tonight. Some of you may listening or may watching this on a replay saying, that's not really a very spiritual conversation. Stop it. Beloved, I wish above all things that you might prosper and be in health. That's what God says. Look, I want you to prosper. Why? Because ministry, Roger, what's that thing you always say?
Ministry, the gospel is free, but ministry costs.
Yeah, that's right. Gospel is free, but ministry cost. One last thing, Keith. If you had one last thing to share with our audience tonight, just kind of in a summary, a final thought that you would share with individuals who need to prioritize their personal finances, what would that be?
Excellent. I appreciate once again having me on, and I hope that what I shared tonight was a blessing. A couple of final thoughts that come to my mind. The first thing is it's important for one to gain as much knowledge as they can. Become as educated as you can in knowledge. Ask questions, get help where necessary, and don't delay. Improving your financial situations can start today. Don't worry about what happened in the past. Figure out where you are today and develop a plan to move forward. You can do it, and God has blessed you with what you need to do that.
Wow.
Awesome,
Wow.
awesome. Hey,
Listen,
before we end, Keith, could you share with us if someone needs help in their community, where would you recommend they go to find this help? If it's not at the church, if the church has no clue of how to help someone, where would you recommend they go to get some help?
Yeah.
Great. That's a great question. And I wish I knew an answer that would be universal. I wish the answer would be that every church would start a ministry and do that. But I find that, I wish that would be the case. And I would encourage churches to create that as a priority because, and even in my community right now, I'm not even sure where I would send the person to start. So I think there's a need, there's a void here. And I would employ pastors to create a structure, find individuals like myself who have some experience in finance and start creating an environment where people can come and ask questions of the church. I think that's a starting ground because people want to go where they're comfortable and most familiar with. I could always send them to a financial advisor and so forth, but that's not where people want to start. They want to start where they're familiar with. So I would encourage the churches to start environments and dialogues like this and invite people who can start giving advice.
Good.
Yeah. That's good. Listen, I have really thoroughly enjoyed you. I like the fact that you said, listen, a part of the budget, you got to put God in your budget, right? And just explaining that and how that works. And then all the other things that went along with our personal finance, like we need to start, we can't trust an organization or our institution to do this for us. But we have to do annual checkups or maybe every 5 years, 3 years. We have to be educated on this so that we can make decisions that's going to impact us. So thank you so much, Alex Garnett. Appreciate you. And this subject is really, really important because the more that we learn how to manage our finances, the more, by God's grace, we'll be able to move the cause of God.
Listen, I truly enjoy this again. Alex, thank you so much for being here, sharing. And I want you to know, I took a ton of notes. I was inspired because I have to be honest, I was one of those guys who did not want to deny. I was in the denial. I was under denial. And it took me some time to get to where I am today, where at least I'm not afraid of the denial or afraid of the finances. So thank you tonight for encouragement. Thank you for some insights of what we can do. I appreciate the fact that we did not spend a lot of time on 1 + 1 = 2, because we could do that on our own. But you gave us the high level and things that we need to do. So again, thank you for that, and I want to thank our viewers for coming and being a part of the Pastors Roundtable.
If I may say too, I'd like to thank one of your producers, Stephanie, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Steph. All right.
Shout out to Stephanie.
She found us a gem tonight. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes. So, as you know, as we shared, this is our final episode for this season. Not for this year, just this season. We're going to take a small hiatus. We're going to take a break for 4 weeks. But beginning the first Friday night in May, we're going to be back stronger and better and ready for season 9. So look out for that information, season 9 of the Pastors Roundtable. And we pray that because of what you have experienced this season, you're going to look forward to season 9 and be here with us. And so those are my parting words. I don't know if my other hosts would like to just share their parting words for this end of season.
Hey, I just say it's been a great season. I'm looking forward to season 9. You guys don't forget us. I know 4 weeks may seem like a long time, but it's going to go just like that. So mark that calendar, that first weekend in May. We're going to be right back here. As a matter of fact, though, we are going to put some content out during these 4 weeks. So you'll just look out, make sure that you go hit that thumbs up, but hit that little bell. If you're watching on YouTube, that little bell is going to let you know anytime that we put out any new content on our YouTube channel, so you will not miss anything that we do. Even during the break, there may be some stuff that comes out, so go ahead, click that little subscribe button, hit that little bell so that you will be notified when that new content comes out.
And listen, look, we challenge you as well. Go ahead and share. Let the people know what's happening on the Pastors Roundtable. So when we come back on May the 3rd, I think it's May the 3rd. I don't know. Check me if I'm wrong. But when we come back, we need to have a whole lot of people, because I'm telling you, next season, when we do these part 2 shows, it's going to be fire.
Oh, boy.
So come on. Pastors Roundtable. Invite people to come, because we are going to be dealing with those topics again, and I know it's going to make a significant impact in ministry as we move the mission that God has planted in our hearts.
Tonight, I just want to say again, thank you to our behind-the-scenes team. Stephanie Scott is one of them, one of our producers. We also have John Mills, who is another producer for the Pastors Roundtable. And we also have TJ Clark, who is not only a producer, but a technical producer for the Pastors Roundtable. On behalf of our hosts, Pastor Paul, Dr. Henry, and myself, we want to thank our guest, and we want to thank you, our viewers, for being a part of joining us to partner for Pastors Roundtable, where we strive to make ministry relevant,
Resourced,
and real. God bless.